Good morning and welcome to this Khaos Control webinar. Delivering consistently great customer service ideally shouldn't be done by YouTube, I'm learning this morning. Anyway, delivering consistently great customer service can help you to stand out from your competition. Khaos Control can enable you and your team to handle everything that comes your way, from day-to-day inquiries with regards to parcel tracking and refunds through to managing your prospects and converting them into customers. As I'm sure you're aware if you know us reasonably well, my name's Andy. If I haven't met you before, welcome. And I'm going to spend the next 30 minutes or so taking you through the ways in which we can help you to deliver brilliant customer service time after time. We've got a couple of housekeeping points to note. Just so you're aware. The first is that if you've got any questions during this webinar, then please use the YouTube chat facility, ideally on the actual video that we're running rather than the previous one. And I'll just make sure that Lindy has got that up as well so that she's on top of any comments you're sending in. There we go. So we're all good there. And good morning, Tim. Secondly, if you haven't already set yourself to the highest quality setting in YouTube, there should be a cog in the bottom right-hand corner of your video screen. If you can click on that and set it to the HD setting, you'll find it a much more enjoyable experience. There's no need to take notes. We're going to upload a recording of the webinar, possibly edited slightly for the beginning after the event, and we're also going to be forwarding you a copy of the notes we've taken for this. So without further ado, I want to get into the CRM in Khaos Control. The communication log in Khaos Control is at the very heart of creating customer service and creating great experiences. During this webinar, we're going to show you the different methods of using the communication log to ensure that your customers' experiences remain consistently positive. I'm going to bring up a training version of Khaos Control now. We'll just log in as Adam. And I'm going to open the CRM Manager. The CRM Manager in Khaos Control is where all of our communications with our customers are collated centrally. So coming into the communication log and clicking on tab 5 for the Comm log leads screen and clicking Go will bring me back a list of all the current comms I've got going on with my customers. At the top, double clicking on a company in this grid, for example, Rita Richards here, populates the second half of this screen with the detailed contacts we've had with that individual customer. We also see an overview in the middle where we have a quick analysis of whether they're buying from us, when they last ordered, etc. This gives you the ability to review all previous contacts with an individual customer, as well as giving you a high-level overview of the entire business in terms of communications. On the right-hand side at the top in our filter set, we have a very important filter called the next action date. Now, the idea of this is to allow you to not get overwhelmed by the information in the comm log. So turning that filter on, you can see we haven't got anybody we're supposed to be calling back today. If I roll that back to include yesterday and hit F5, you can see there are a couple of calls that the user Adam, who I'm logged in as for the purposes of this demo, hasn't made. So we need to follow those up and find out what's occurring. If I turn the date filter back off, everything returns. Customer service teams and sales staff can use the other filters in here to refine the list of customers in the grid further so that only relevant information is displayed. Comm log types, so contact types relative to teams and/or activities, can be really useful for this, in addition to the next action date, which we've already discussed. So for example, if I just wanted to see sales calls, I turn off that not filter, hit F5 again to refresh, and I can see all the calls that need to be made. In terms of configuring contact types and visibility, both these things can be done via system data, so that contact types can be set up to suit your business processes and however you wish to use the comm log. And you can also hide certain comm log types. So you'll see that on our examples, we've got things to do with quotations and sales, we've got things to do with debt chasing, we've got general account queries. So potentially you may only want your sales team to see quotation types, you may only want your accounts team to see debt chasing types. So you can use your system data configuration for user profiles to control that kind of thing. Finally in here, I want to talk about really is this initial overview of the comm log and CRM and Khaos Control. Each company has their own separate comm log that drives into here, and we'll be having a look at some of those during the webinar. So what are we actually going to cover? Firstly, I'm going to run through the different scenarios we're intending to cover during the webinar, and then we're going to go through them in detail. So don't worry about taking notes again. You'll have copies of all this to hand. But just for your information, the first thing we're going to look at is the quote lifecycle and how you manage that process in Khaos Control. The second thing we're going to go through is dealing with a customer return and tracking the process to ensure that your customer is actually happy. We're also going to be looking at building automated emails into your Comm logs. Fourthly, we're going to be identifying and contacting a specific group of customers quickly and easily, for example, in the case of a product recall. We're going to be looking at managing your account customers, specifically with regards to ensuring that you've maintained an accurate audit trail that's available to everybody. We're going to look at really quickly adding a Comm log entry. So wherever you are in the system, whatever you're doing at that point in time, you can create one of those from scratch very, very rapidly. And then finally, CRM on the go, and how our Khaos Control cloud system, when it's combined with Khaos Control, can allow you to further improve your customer service. As before, if you've got any examples or questions or anything you want to bring up during the webinar, please use the chat facility or email training@khaoscontrol.com. If we don't get time to talk about any questions you've got on the way through, then we'll have a Q&A session at the end, and Lindy and the team will be happy to come back to you as well. Lindy's just mentioned that Darren's having some issues with the sound dropping in and out in full screen. If anybody else is having any problems with that, if you could message us via the chat facility, that'd be really useful. Thanks again. Right, onwards and upwards. So the quote lifecycle and how we manage it in Khaos Control. So as I'm sure you're aware, making a sale isn't simply a question of putting a quotation in the system and waiting for the till to ring. Quotes need to be managed and progressed to ensure that you convert them into sales at a decent rate. I'm expecting that you measure things like conversion rates, dates of the last contact or follow-up, what your current pipeline value is, and reasons for failure if you haven't managed to convert a quote. In Khaos Control, quotes are managed from within the CRM Manager screen. So we're already in the CRM screen. Tab 6, one along from the Comm log, is our quotes screen. So if I click the Go button, this defaults to show all of the currently pending quotes that myself and the team are currently working on. You can see that we've clearly got, we've easily got access to key statistics for the overall performance in terms of our quotations. So you can see in the top left, we've got successful, unsuccessful, and pending counts. In addition to those stats, we've got high-level net value overview figures as well. So we can see what the entire pipeline's worth at the moment. We've got a conversion rate percentage, which the system's constantly calculating, and you'll see that change as we go through this morning's presentation. A conversion value, so that's taking the percentage against the pipeline and saying if you converted everything on average, then this is what you'd end up with. And then a weighted value. The weighted value, and here we'll need to pay attention to the grid as well, takes the net total for each quotation and then multiplies that by the percentage weighting we've applied to come out with a weighted value for the quotation. And that weighted value then gives you an idea of, based on what your salespeople think their chances are of winning an opportunity, that then gives you a weighted value for your pipeline. You can also filter the grid based on status. So at the minute, we're looking at all the pending quotes. We can use that drop down to show successful and unsuccessful as well. In order to see everything, simply turn off that filter and hit F5 or press go, and that will come back. You'll notice on the grid, once we're looking at everything or we're looking at unsuccessful quotes, that we have both a status and a reason and a high-level view to see why we're failing to win opportunities. And if I click into edit mode and press F4, you can see the F4 lookup we've got here in terms of the different reasons we've got for missing out on the deal at the moment. Next to that, we also have the weighting lookup. So again, this is quite important in terms of the way the quotation system can be configured to help you manage your business. So it's not static, it's not kind of forcing you down a specific route, but we've got 5 different statuses for a quotation from our perspective, from cold through to the money has arrived in the bank. And those different statuses have an impact on the percentage override for the weighting, and then the weighted value that feeds back into our overview figures. So for example, this is set to a verbal agreement at the minute. If I change that to a written agreement, the override goes up to 80%, our value goes up to 384, and our weighted value increases accordingly. I'll just press save. Okay, so that's an overview of the quotation screen itself. Chasing up quotes, so following up quotes that already exist, is very easy to see, very easily use this screen to see which opportunities need to be followed up on. The CRM is at the heart of things again, so our comm log really sits at the heart of this. The first two columns in the quotation screen are CRM count and CRM days. Now these highlight the number of touches we've had with the customer that relate to that specific quotation and have a comm log entry against them. And then they also highlight the number of days since we last contacted that customer. So very simple to add a comm log entry using the context menu option. So any progress updates from our sales team can be added and stored centrally. That will then in turn update the count and days columns. So in the scenario we're looking at here for chasing a quote, one of our customers, the Albert Hotel, are purchasing Christmas jumpers for their staff. I'm just going to put myself back on the pending quotes, and I'm going to reset the grid. And so the Albert Hotel have got a quote from the 21st of November here. If I double click into that, it loads the sales order for the Albert Hotel, and I can see that they're buying some very tasteful Christmas jumpers. I do apologize, I've gone slightly wrong on my script. I'm just going to close that for a moment. We'll come back to the sales order in a minute. If I go into edit mode and focus on that line, we're going to right click and select new comm log entry. And we're going to say that we're checking sizes with the staff at the hotel from our phone call we've had with, I think it's Andrew at the Albert Hotel. And we're going to call him back to confirm sizes and place an order. Because he's very keen, we're going to make sure that callback happens this afternoon. So I'm going to use the next date and time to say, right, okay, Adam's going to call him back later. And we're going to set the CRM type to call. If we click OK and OK again, we're going to change the weighting. So this goes to a verbal agreement because that's what we had on the phone from Andrew. And I'm going to hit save. And you'll see that our pipeline, our weighted value on the pipeline is updated. You'll see that the count for the CRM is updated and the number of days is set to 0. Now, the beauty of having put that comm log entry in as we went is that we still had the quote headlines with us. We were able to update the weighting, and that's updated Khaos Control all the way through the system. If I double click on the order, which is where I jumped ahead slightly earlier, I apologize for that, and go to the CRM tab and the comm log tab, you can see that the comm log entry we entered a couple of moments ago has already fed through with our next date and time set against it. I can also go straight to Albert's company record and click on the the comm log button at the top. And again, I'm straight into our Albert Hotel's personal comm log, and I can see that I've been talking to the team about sizes and that we're going to be calling them back later on. Last but not least, we can then go to the overall comm log as well. So I'll open the CRM Manager and go back to the comm log and press go. And the Albert Hotel are at the top, double clicking, they've come through here. And I can get back to the quotes screen from here if I'd like to, or straight from the quotes tab by just pressing that quotes button on the right-hand screen in the middle gutter. So imagine we've traveled a little forward in time. It's the afternoon already. We've called Andrew at the hotel back, and he's decided to place an order. So in order to do that, we need to load his quote up and convert it. So the Albert Hotel quote in our quote screen in the CRM screen is here. I'm going to double click, and I'm going to use the other actions menu to convert that quote into a sales order. Turn the blue button green, click on OK, and away we go. So if we go to the CRM comm log, we can see the previous entries. I'm going to add a second and a third entry here because in placing his order, Andrew's mentioned that the Albert Hotel may want to buy some extra jumpers close to Christmas. They've got some extra staff coming on board. So right click a new comm log entry. We're already into the Albert Hotel's company record, and I can add some notes for us to follow up on shortly. Again, I'm going to keep this against myself. It's linked to this sales order. I'm going to set the next date time to a couple of weeks hence. So 7th December will do. And call type can be call again. So we click OK. And we save the sales order. Now, if we close this screen and refresh the quotation screen, you'll see that the Albert Hotels dropped off the list because they were a pending quote and they've now become successful. You'll see that our conversion rate's gone up to 50%. And if we filter on the successful quotes and press go or press F5, you'll see that the Albert Hotels come through. The CRM count for this is now up to 3. And again, we're on 0 days because we've talked to him today. So everything's hunky-dory from that perspective. Now, unsuccessful quotations. Obviously, every bid we put in for a piece of work, I'm sure we all win every time. However, sometimes we do need to mark a quote as unsuccessful. And this screen allows you to not only do that, but also to record a reason, link it into the comm log and everything else. So we're going to imagine that we've called back the nobody's in. I apologize for the bad pun, completely my fault. I'm going to put myself in edit mode. And I'm going to right click and create a new comm log entry whilst I've been talking to them so that I know what's going on. So we've given them a call. They feel we're too expensive and aren't seeing the value. I'm going to put a response of NFA, which is an acronym at our end for no further action. I'm not going to worry about dates and times, but I am going to use a separate CRM type. This is completely up to you guys. Personally, we have a no further action CRM type, which means that this doesn't fall into new call lists and stuff like that. I'll click OK a couple of times. I'm then going to set the reason. And I'll just reopen that screen because it hasn't refreshed properly. And I'm going to set the too expensive reason. And save that. You'll notice that the comm log entry, again, the count number of entries against nobody's in has gone up. If I green select that line, right click, mark selected pending as unsuccessful, that'll then update all the other figures for me and update the quotation as well. So it drops off the screen straight away. Our conversion rate pops back down from 50%. And that's one of the most important things from my perspective in terms of managing your pipeline and your quotations. That pipeline value and conversion rate are updated automatically. Unsuccessful quotes, again, update the count automatically. So you're on top of what's occurring immediately. Cool. Scenario 2. We talked about building automated emails into your comm logs in order to provide a complete overview of your company's dialogue with each individual customer. So when creating emails in Khaos Control using the message templates, you've got an option to automatically create an entry in the company comm log when the email has been sent. It doesn't matter what type of email you're sending, the comm log will be updated as a result. This is an excellent, no-fuss way of keeping track of the automatic emails that you've sent to a customer, as the contents of the resulting email can quickly be loaded up in the company screen, so other users can track what has been sent previously and follow up if they need to. In the following example, we've sent an email to Rita, who you may recognize from earlier, to let her know that her goods are on the way. So I'm going to load Rita's company record up. I'm going to use that comm log button again to go straight to her comm log, which is on the 5th CRM tab and sub-tab 2. And we've got an entry on here called Your Goods Are On The Way. So I'm just going to find that in the column. And you'll see we've sent her 2 of these over time. So we're interested in the one from November. Rita's wondering, what's going on. She's talking to myself and one of the team. We can double click on this entry and bring up a dialog straight away, which shows us who the email was sent to, who it was sent from, when, subjects, etc. We can also see the detail of what was generated in the email, including anything you've pulled from kind of tags in the template. So things like the order number, date, what was dispatched, quantities, tracking references, etc. You can also see that you've got a source on the comm log. So you can see that we've actually sent Rita 4 automated emails. You can also see we've linked some files on her comm log. We've had some complaints and there's been an order/quote. Having this information to hand means that everybody in your team is completely up to date. They've not got to worry about filtering through Outlook or searching a mailbox or anything else. So The third thing we're going to look at in this presentation is dealing with a customer return and tracking the process to ensure that your customer's happy. Obviously, that's important. We want people to be repeat buyers as multi-channel sellers. The only way we achieve that is by keeping them on board and on message, and returns happen. They're a fact of life, however much we try to avoid them. From the customer's perspective, the returns process needs to be as positive and pain-free as possible, and using the comments and complaints alongside the Comm log and Khaos Control can help you to achieve that. So this next scenario, we're going to create a complaint for a customer, and we're going to use Rita again. She gets everywhere, this lady, bless her. She's ordered an ironing board from us, which has been damaged in transit, which I'm sure nobody recognises as a likely scenario. So we're already in Rita's Comm log. I'm going to go firstly to her comments and complaints tab. So we're in the CRM tab, and then tab 4 within here is comments and complaints. And you can see that we've got an entry for a Brabrantia ironing board. We've got the overview of the complaint itself. The customer's going to send us some photos, and we've got the current status of received. If we nip back to the Comm log, the observant among you will have already noticed we've got a Comm log entry here already to say this has happened, the item's been damaged in transit, it's got that source of complaint, and it's got the source code Comm C30, which lets us know that A, it's linked to a complaint, but also the specific complaint this links back to. The other thing to highlight on the far left-hand side of the grid is that attach tick box. So that tells us whether there are any files, records, information, documents, images attached to the Comm log entry. As you might have noticed, Rita's sending us some photos so we can see how badly the courier she's dealing with have damaged her ironing board. And we're going to attach these to our Comm log entry. So edit mode obviously is a must. If I focus on this line and right-click for the context menu and use the Manage Linked Documents button, this is something that you've always been able to do in Khaos Control in terms of linking documents to the Comm log. However, what you haven't always been able to do is to link multiple things to the same line. So this dialog allows you to do that. Hopefully, you'll notice here are some I prepared earlier. I'll click on that new item. It loads up Windows Explorer dialog, and we've got some product images for our Brabrantia ironing board that we prepared earlier. Well, actually, Lindy did, to be perfectly fair. It wasn't me, as you'd expect. I shy away from the hard graft. So save that. They're all here. In terms of viewing those, because we've now got that attach tick box there, we know this is a line that's got files attached to it in the database. We can double click, and we get that dialog to show us what exactly is attached, and double click on one of those entries, and the photo itself will load up. So we can see that the courier's had a good job at that packaging. We could nip through some of the other photos as well if we wanted to. Yeah, DPD, that seems unlikely, doesn't it, to me? But there we go. Lindy sources these photos from somewhere. So updating the complaint as it's processed through. We've had a look at the photos. We want to make sure everything's in line in terms of knowing where this complaint is. So we're in Rita's customer record still, and we're going to go back to the comments and complaints tab we were in a moment ago. So tab 4. If we put ourselves in edit mode, we're going to change the status on the grid from received to processing. So press F4, click processing, and click OK. You'll see that the add to Comm log and history comment elements kind of pop up so that we can edit into them. So in the history comment area, we're going to go ironing board received, photos checked and stored. And we're going to click the add to communication log button. We get asked for an entry here, so we're going to go ring Rita to let her know that we are processing her complaint. And apologies for the random character in there. Comm log type for that's going to be call. Click on OK. And the Comm log entry has been added. And you see we've been taken back to there. So let's press save. Cool. Sorry, very quickly going back to the Comm log. You can see that source code, Comm C30 is still there and the complaint type is still there. This time, obviously, we haven't got an attachment. In the comments and complaints screen, you can see the bottom grid has got a couple of entries here now for the old status we're on and then the new status. We can see the old and new users responsible. So obviously if Lindy or another member of the team here was dealing with those names would change. And we've got our date timestamps as well. Now that's lovely in terms of processing a complaint. Managing this, it's important to monitor the items that are causing complaints and to have an overview of making sure that everything's moving through the system as you'd expect. So within the CRM Manager, we've got a screen that pulls all this together. So I've opened a new CRM Manager screen. Tab 7 is complaints/cases. And if I hit go, that brings back everything we've got in the system, complaint-wise. Now, we've got some quick wins on here on the right-hand side. If I only want to see active complaints, I can click on the active button to set those statuses, click go or press F5, and you'll see that refreshes to 6 active complaints that we're working on at the minute. So from a management perspective, if I want to make sure everything's happening as and when it should do, I can be keeping an eye on here. I can see that out of the active complaints, it's been 29 days since we talked to the Hippo Giant Plus driver people, so Jenny Armitage and Grantham. So as a manager, I'd maybe thinking, okay, we've left that a month. Was that appropriate? We'll see how we're going. You can see it's in the status of processing those, so we might be waiting for something to come back from Hippo in terms of fixing the grip. But there we go. The other filters on this screen that are very useful in terms of managing what's going on allow you to drill into different suppliers, different users that have initiated comments and complaints, comment date ranges, so if you're only interested in looking at the last week's worth of activity, and then things like product type, complaint type, and complaint status, as we've already talked about. There are 2 high-level reports you can print from within this screen, which personally I think are quite handy. On the other actions menu, we've got customer comments and complaints. So you can set a date parameter on here. I'm not going to. This gives us a nice high-level summary of what's going on complaints-wise. So if you were going to a meeting, sending a summary for a colleague or a line manager, this is a really quick, easy win to say, look, here are the complaints we're dealing with their statuses, with the latest comments. Away you go. So information delivered, jobs are good. The second report is a bit more nerdy, I think is probably the best way of putting it, and that allows you a lovely statistical overview by stock type and complaint type, and can be very handy for identifying and drilling into complaint trends. Because of our test data, you can see it's all rather binary, with 1s and 0s. We've got the odd 2 or 3, but we'll pretend they're not there. But obviously in a real life situation for one of you guys where you'd be dealing with, I assume, a number of complaints, this allows you to really quickly drill into problems with a specific type of product or a specific type of complaint within a specific period from a high level, and then you can start getting into the detail within this screen in terms of understanding what's going on. So the next scenario we're going to look at is to do with identifying and contacting a specific group of customers quickly and easily. Now, quite often, a sales rep will be asked to phone customers who've received a new catalogue, remind them of an offer, inform them of a new product range or something similar. We can do this really easily using the CRM Manager to make sure the calls happen, but obviously we need to get the data there in the first place. So in this scenario, we're going to find all the customers who tried to buy an item that was marked as lost demand, because the item's back in stock. We're assuming they're still interested, so we're going to send them, see if they'd like to buy the product now, and we're going to do that from the Comm log in terms of the calls. But the first thing we're going to do is find those customers. So I'm going to use the sales summary screen, and in the best sellers tab, which is the first one that opens up, I'm going to use the F4 filter button to add the lost demand filter. So this is called show lost demand only. It's down towards the bottom. I need to make sure I tick it, which when I was practicing this earlier, I managed not to and confused myself immensely. We're going to set our date range to include everything from the start of October so that we've got some records to play with. And if I click OK, you'll see we've got 8 different coffee types that come back. 7 different coffee types and a nail pack. If I double click on our Hawaiian Kona coffee, that will share that filter across our tabs in sales summary. So I can then go to customers, press go, and I'll get a list of all the companies who wanted to buy the Kona coffee and were unable to do so. Having green selected these people, I can bring them into our list manager and then generate the Comm log entries for them. So Control+A selects everybody in the grid. I can then right click and use the context menu to add to list manager. We've already got a lost demand section, and you'll see that Lindy has very assiduously set up a list ready for this because she knew it was going to happen. So if I highlight that and click add, you'll see the 10 lines have jumped into our list. I can go to our list tab, I'm going to look at the last invoice contact. I'm not going to worry about data protection and subscriber contact stuff because we're going to call these people rather than mail them or email them. So I'm going to be a little more blasé than I would be normally. And that gives us a list of 10 companies to contact with regards to this offer. I'm going to green select everybody, and you'll see the action buttons above the grid include Add Comm Log. So if I click on Add Comm Log, I'm going to slap a description in of kind of coffee now available. We're going to add a response to say, call customer following lost demand order. We're going to set date time of this to tomorrow, rather than trying to fit everything in today. And we'll set that to 1 o'clock-ish. And we're going to set a CRM type of call. If I click on OK, that'll generate Commlog entries for each of the people in that grid. And we can go and have a look in the Commlog to see how that's come back. So that when Adam/myself needs to call these people, they can open the CRM Manager, they can go to the Commlog. If I filter on just my calls, all those people we were talking to a moment ago have come back on the list. We've got our next date of time. So when we call these, if I was using my next action date filter, there'd be nothing for today. If I open that out to tomorrow, all these records would come back. And in terms of contacting these customers, we're able to phone them up and crack on with them really, really easily and quickly from the Commlog. So for example, if I double click on the Albert Hotel, I can see the previous communications with them. I can also see their order history, which is where that now becomes really useful because the person on the phone has an idea of how frequently they order, average monthly spend, that kind of stuff. So it's giving you some useful information there. Then at the bottom of the screen, I've got these two tabs. So descriptions shows me an extended view of the bottom grid in terms of the data if it flows over the grid cells themselves. But the contact information, which is more useful here, gives me the phone numbers I'm going to need. So the direct line, mobile number, company phone number, email address if it's relevant. So in terms of the Albert Hotel, I'm going to give them a call. I've put myself in edit mode and clicked new item so I can kind of record this as it happens. And I'm going to say, right, I've called them Recona Coffee. They're not interested. So I'm going to set that to NFA. I'm going to set the contact type to no further action. Andrew Angus has been pulled in as a contact automatically, and I'm just going to save that. I can then work down the list, picking another entry, so Gadsby's Comestibles, for example. Again, edit, new item. We called Recona Coffee again, and if I had any sense, I'd have saved that and pasted it. And they're kind of interested, so they'd like a call back in a couple of weeks' time. So we've been talking to Colin. I can check the F8 list if there's anybody else we were talking to as well. For example, if it was Julia, I'm going to set that next date time for a couple of weeks hence, and save. Cool. So the Commlog pulls into the heart of what you're doing there with those follow-ups, even though we've started in the sales summary screen, and is a really useful tool there for generating some new sales if that would be relevant for you. The next scenario we're going to look at is using the Commlog to help manage your account customers. So in this scenario, the computing department are a customer of ours, and they've rung up with a query about their invoices. So I'm going to close everything down before that all gets a little bit out of hand and bring up the computing department's company record. We're going to go straight to the Commlog, and again, we'll use that nice button at the top to do so. And we're going to put ourselves in edit mode so that we can record what's been happening whilst we've been on the phone with them. So we're going to add a new line, which is your double white page or your F3 button. The contact type in this occasion is going to be account query. In terms of the call we're having with them, they've rung to query their last invoice. The response on this is that we're going to get our accounts team to investigate. Next date and time we'll leave as a default, so it needs to happen by then. What we do want to do, though, is link this entry to the specific sales order that they're phoning up about. So if we right-click for the context menu, we've got the option to associate with a sales order or quote. So if I click that, we get a dialog listing all the orders this company's had. The order number I've been quoted is S01076, and I can just hit enter. It'll populate into the source code column on the grid. I can also set the contact who phoned us up. So it was Jean who was on the phone, and I know it's Mrs. Jean Franks in our system, but you've got a drop down there with all different contacts listed. Again, click on OK, having pressed F8, and that populates into the grid as well. And then save that, and their Comm log entries been updated and saved. Now, if we wanted our colleague in Kate in accounts to follow that up for the computing department without having to send them a message in Khaos Control or dropping them an email or slapping a post-it note on their forehead, we'd add a Comm log entry against them. So if we go back into edit mode and create a new line again, this time, rather than creating it for myself, I'm going to create the Comm log entry for Kate. I'm going to set the type to account query again, and I'm going to ask Kate to take this over. So again, we'll leave next date time as they are. You'll notice that the line has got a nice yellow color because I'm creating this for somebody else rather than for myself. I'm going to associate this with the same sales order so that Kate's got a running start on what on earth is going on rather than having to look back through the comm log. And again, Jean's the relevant contact, so I'm going to select her off the F8 option. So if I press save, jobs are good. Now, comm log entries there mean that our overall comm log will be updated, the computing department are up to date, Kate's call list is going to update with that query for her to handle. Everything sticks together really nicely. However, a third element that we haven't talked about so far is debt chasing and debt management. So if you're a B2B company and you're having to manage invoices and payments, this is a really easy way of using the comm log from the account debt management screen to record dates and times where the debt chasing stage is changed, where something happened, where you received a call, etc. So in order to do this, I'm going to use a company record called Beaver Horse Products. I'm going to bring their company record up and just get hold of their address information, so I've got that to hand. And I'm going to undock their screen so we can play with both at the same time. Cool. So we'll put them over there. I've got that for reference. I'm also going to open the account screen and go to debt management, because obviously in Khaos Control, this is where you've got the this is where the debt chasing runs from. I'm going to pop that out as well so I can have this up at the same time as I've got the account contact details. So if I look for BHP on the grid, just by typing into it and focusing down, you can see they don't owe us a great deal of money. However, they have owed it to us for quite a while, more than 6 months, looking at this. So we're going to get in touch with them, find out what's happening, and go from there. So I can add a comm log entry straight from this grid. So on the actions, I've got add comm log entry. I could also go to the company record that I've got open, edit, new item, set debt chase, and then we could have checks in the post. See, we've never heard that one before from a customer we've been dealing with before. So we're going to check with our accounts team in 4 days' time. And we'll call back if nothing received. We'll go and set the next date. So that's going to be start next week. Source code we're not worried about here because they haven't mentioned it, but we do know that we've been talking to Ruth, so we'll record that as we go. Hit save, and so that will turn up on Adam's debt chasing list and everything else. I'll just redock these screens back in. And close everything down, and we'll go on to our next entry. So we've all been there in terms of creating new sales orders. Oh, I do apologise if I used an actual postcode. We might be looking at a purchase order. We might have the sales summary screen up. We might be looking at products. And the phone goes, and we need to make sure we take a note of what's going on. So adding a comm log entry in the system is really quick and easy and doesn't have to be done via any of the methods we've already looked at. You can do it straight off a shortcut combination, and that means it will turn up in the right time, right place for somebody to process. Control, Shift, and C brings up our Commlog entry dialog, and we can add anything we like. Because we're dealing with Eugenie in the sales order screen, her company record is defaulted to the to this, but we could as easily be using the Albert Hotel, who we dealt with earlier, or another company record from that perspective. Description, response, set the next date time, go for 30th, and we'll say this was a call, and we can just click OK, and away we go. And so adding a Commlog entry in the system can be as quick and as simple and as easy as that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is CRM on the go, and how Khaos Control Cloud can further improve what you're doing from a customer service perspective. We've been looking at how the CRM in Khaos Control works, so this is an opportunity to look at how this works with regards to our hybrid solution with Khaos Control Cloud. Now, I apologize for not having this set up in advance. With the fun we have with YouTube getting this to run initially, I had to close all my other browser windows. So if you'll bear with me for a moment while I log in, we'll show you what's going on. So Khaos Control Cloud can be linked to an instance of Khaos Control, and that means that people out on the road, and if you're working remotely, if you're a manager or a salesperson or a customer service person, you can have access to exactly the same information as you've got in Khaos Control. So you've got the CRM option here. We can drill into that. We can look at our opportunities and quotes, and you can see that we've got a very similar screen. The layouts are slightly different. However, you can see that you've got your successful, unsuccessful, and pending counts. You've got your pipeline and your conversion rate at the top. And then we can drill into pending, successful, and unsuccessful quotations. And that will then update the list at the bottom in terms of the quotes that we're looking at. We've still got as well all the other default information we had in Khaos Control in terms of reasons, in terms of our weighting lookups, in terms of our override values. And we can scroll across the right-hand side as well to see things like invoices, invoice notes, and addresses and agents. Last but not least, you've also got access to all the different filters that you'd have within the quotation screen itself. So you can drill into those CRM counts and stuff like that. So all that quote information that a salesperson could need whilst they're out on the road on a tablet, on a laptop, on their phone is available. I've got the option of drilling straight into a sales order or to a customer record from here. So again, if you were discussing in person with a customer or while you're out of the office on the phone, you'd have access to this stuff straight away. We can edit and create orders and quotations on the fly. All that functionality is available. Now, the other thing we can do really quickly and easily from within here is obviously look at the leads that have been generated in the Commlog. So at the moment, we're looking at the Commlog from the point of view of a desktop. So the system understands that we're using a PC and it's showing as much of the grid as possible. The view is quite traditional. You'll notice that the Commlog in cloud looks slightly different in terms of the contact and address information is at the top. We then get our contact summary grid, which again is very similar to what we had in Khaos Control. And then we can double click on an entry in here to populate the communication detail grid. And you'll see that as we double click, our contact details appear at the top as well. Now, the real beauty of this from our perspective is that not only does this work on your desktop in Khaos Control Cloud, if you're out of the office and on your phone or on your tablet, you can specify this to work remotely. So I just need to try and emulate this for you. You'll see that we get our thumbnails, which is what I was going to talk you through within Khaos Control itself. So in the Commlog, in order to make this viewable on mobile and to make it usable on mobile, so rather than having to scroll around a massive grid of data, we've got a quick summary of our contacts, and you'll notice we've got nice tiles now rather than a grid. If you imagine sweeping your finger across, you can look at information and a dialogue that tells you all about the information that would be on the grid for that. And we can also drill into the detail for that line as well. So again, that gives us the contact information, it gives us the communication detail. Again, we can swipe, look at the information, and we can see the individual contacts we've had with that company. So all that detail is available at the touch of a button. What we can also do from here, and that again makes this incredibly powerful from our perspective, is we can put ourselves into edit mode, and we can start adding extra lines into the Commlog. So if we were out of the office and talking to a customer for any reason, we can click on the new item button, We can then edit that, and we can start specifying what we were talking about. So we might have had a call with them. We can pick a contact, and we can work our way down through the list in terms of times, descriptions, responses, next dates, etc. And we can say, we'll give them a call back next Tuesday. User's going to be admin. Jobs are good. And we'll save that down. And so you can see there how Chaos Control Cloud is giving you a completely different interface and way of working, but with data that's in your Chaos Control database, which from our perspective, we feel is really powerful. Cool. Well, that's the last of our scenarios I was going to cover for the CRM functionality. I hope you found that useful. During the webinar, we've taken you through how you can use the CRM and the Comm log, from quotations to comments, complaints to accounts, and much, much more, showing you how you can manage your customer's journey with you and hopefully making it consistently awesome. We've also looked at how Chaos Control Cloud links into our hybrid solution and how that hangs together in terms of making that an invaluable tool for delivering great customer service. We're now going to spend some time answering any questions that you've got. So I don't know if Lindy's collated anything from the chat during the period. If you've got any questions that you'd like us to cover off now, if you could include those in the chat, that'd be great. If you've got something you'd rather we took offline, please do email us at training@chaoscontrol.com or drop us a tweet at chaoserp. We'll just give you a couple of minutes because I know not everybody types as quickly or as badly as I do, and we'll go from there. Oh, hi, Scott. Thank you very much for asking about the follow-up emails. So in terms of automating follow-up emails, there isn't a way of doing that via invoice rules right now. What you can do are set email triggers up based on quotations. So when a new quotation is created or a status changes, you can define an email trigger and have that fire off automatically. The other thing you could do, and it's interesting, on the back of the blog post we sent out earlier this week, to do with Black Friday and stuff to set up and the way you could do workflows, a couple of customers have asked about following up quotations off the back of that. So you could use the workflow trigger functionality in Chaos Control, and I'll bring the screen up very quickly just to make sure everyone knows what I'm talking about. So in the report window, you've got that little alarm clock. So that trigger allows you to look at and set an email trigger, a workflow for any of the data queries that you've got set up in the report window. What this means is it can be used as a management tool in terms of reminding you to do things and making sure that stuff's happened as and when you wanted it to, and being used as kind of like a red flag tool. But what it can also do is generate emails to your customers. So you can link these to a template. We could have a data query in here which says, right, once a quotation is older than 30 days, for example, it gets picked up by the report, and then everybody that gets picked up by that gets sent an email saying, quotation has been raised. We've had it for a while. Do you want us to keep hold of it? And then using that as an opportunity to initiate action. You might also want to send internal emails at the same time so that your salespeople are on the same page. So maybe you could combine that email campaign with a phone call as well. But obviously that'll be up to you. I hope that helps, Scott. If anybody else has got a question, please do fire away. And obviously, if any of that wasn't clear, please do say. Okay, well, I think we've been at this point for kind of 4 or 5 minutes. I'll draw things to a close if that's okay. Thank you for your questions, Scott, and for the other feedback to the chat window. I can only apologise again for the slight hiatus at the start. I don't know what Google were playing at, but I'm glad we got past the error messages, and I'm glad you were able to join us. We will be sending out a copy of the webinar, so if you want to share it with colleagues, friends, etc., you'll be able to do that. Lindy and the team will be preparing their notes, and those will come out with that at the same time. We'll be running another webinar. At the moment, we're planning to do that before Christmas, treat in the run-up on the, say on the 21st, 22nd-ish. We might move that depending on feedback we get. However, our next webinar is going to be on workflows. So that's the functionality I've just started talking about there, which allows you to really revolutionize what you're doing in terms of process and procedure and making sure stuff happens in as automated and efficient a manner as possible. If you've got any questions you'd like us to deal with during that webinar, or there are any topics you'd like us to consider for future webinars, please do let myself or Lindy know. Training@khaoscontrol.com, or drop myself an email, or use our Twitter account with @KhaosERP. Details on how to sign up for the next webinar will be going out as per, and hopefully we'll see you again then. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.